a little idea of where I started, I actually used to be a high school physics teacher. That was me and some of my students back in the day with doing projects. When I had always been a creative person, always loved, just making stuff, right? Whatever it was. But my parents, my family, didn't necessarily support and understand the idea of making a living off of doing something creative. So they wanted something more tangible, something more secure. And I think as immigrant parents, that's what they wanted of their child, like have a stable job. So I made them happy. I went and became a teacher. And during my teaching was when I was like, well, I want a side hustle, right? Like I like teaching. This gives me like, my monthly paycheck, but I want to do something for fun on the side, something that like will get my creative juices flowing. So some of the things I tried sewing. I love fashion. So I started sewing my own clothes. At the time, eBay was the only option. There was no Etsy yet. So, that was the platform that I sold online. Things sold, it was slow. It wasn't a very great business. And what I realized was that, because I'm not formally trained, I was only able to sew things for people who were exactly my body size. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is not the best business idea. However, what I did get into is I started collecting dolls. And I started sewing clothes for the dolls. And what I realized is people were willing to pay way more for doll clothes than for people clothes. But as I started doing research into it, I was like, why are some doll clothes selling for $5 and why were some selling for $800 for one outfit? And I started studying this. I was like, if I'm going to start selling this doll clothes, I don't want to be the one selling $5 dresses. It takes a long time. How do I become the $800 dresses? And as I started studying, the different websites and, what they're selling, I realized that one of the biggest things was good photography. That the stores that had better product photos made more money. Usually, and this is kind of like how I learned about marketing myself, right? And what's going to lend into the idea of creating impactful images. You can have a dress, and if you photograph that dress, okay, it's a cute dress. But now, if I can dress this doll in it, give her a name, tell a story of her doing stuff in that dress, right? It now actually has a story behind people connected more with it. And I was able to sell a lot of my creations for like hundreds of dollars. Like some of these outfits were like selling for like, I would say anywhere from like $300 to $500. I never got to the $800 mark, but I got pretty close, right? Like per outfit is not bad. But you can see like I started giving my dolls personalities and they all had names and they each had a particular style. So now when I was selling these dresses, it wasn't just a random dress anymore, right? And in our little niche community, people knew my dolls. And so that was what gave me the start to the idea of marketing, branding, and also good photography. So going back, this was my side hustle. I was still a teacher at the time, and I was photographing dolls. And so my coworkers were like, hey, can you photograph my kids? Like, I have a baby. I mean, you photograph dolls. Like, you could photograph a kid, right? I'm like, that's probably not that different, right? It's very different. The kids don't just stay still for you to figure out the lighting and all that. But I had fun with it. People started having babies. My coworkers were kind of around that age. And dogs, their pets. And referrals just started happening. And then the babies, this is the same child, same dog, by the way, right? Like, I believe it was a year or less apart from each other. But as I started photographing more of my coworkers' kids, word started spreading about what I was doing. And I still remember at the time, that was when I was telling my mom, I was like, hey, like, my photography is actually like doing really well, Mom. And she's like, okay, that's nice, dear, but don't let it affect your real job. But one thing led to another, started photographing babies. And from there, my coworkers started having cousins who were getting married. And eventually they started getting married because I started teaching straight out of grad school. So a lot of my colleagues were also all like 23, 24, right? And we all started teaching at the same time. So eventually my friends, my peers, my colleagues started getting into the getting married age. And so I started photographing weddings, and I think it was just a combination of right time, like timing, place, knowing the people and my interest, all of that just aligned together. And I found myself fully booked with weddings within 6 months. And my last year of teaching, I was basically doing teaching and photography, 2 full-time jobs at the same time. I would come into work early, teach till 3, leave, and then go do an engagement session or consultation meeting or whatever, go home, edit. At this time, I feel like I've been teaching long enough I didn't have to lesson plan so much anymore. But, grade some papers or whatever, sleep, and the next day start all over again. And so it was like 2 full-time jobs. And I remember thinking I think I can quit, because the salary at that time was starting to match. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, once I quit teaching, right now I'm working basically 40 hours, right? Once I quit teaching, I'm going to have so much free time. I'm going to have so much me time. It doesn't work that way. Once you quit one, but how lucky, especially for those who are doing it full time already, right? But I was just thinking, how lucky am I that I get to do something I love and it doesn't even feel like work, right? I was easily putting in 70 hours a week, but it never felt like work because it was either looking for inspiration or shooting for fun or marketing or looking at the images that I was creating, right? So I feel very lucky that it's 17 years later and I'm still doing this now. So it's a lot of good planning, good marketing as well, getting those impactful images, making a statement with what you do, and letting people see it. So, wedding, these are some of the couples that I got to photograph. And it's a big honor because most of them have me following them through their life, right? I get to see them from engagement to getting married. And then eventually, when they start having babies, they come back years later, and then second baby, third babies, fourth babies, fifth babies. It's all, it's great. I mean, she ended up with 4 babies, and I don't have them here, but I have other ones that have 5, even 7 babies. So it's great. It's keep making babies. But yeah, when they have siblings and stuff like that, I have them just always coming back for more memories that we get to document for them. It's a great honor that we get to be part of this. From there, as the babies started to grow older, I added more products to my offerings. And now one of the big money makers I do is mini sessions, especially during holidays and during Mother's Day. But that one was really targeting people who now had older children. The baby phase, I feel once they're past the preschool phase, what I found is a lot of families forget to make time for photography, right? When they're babies, right? Oh my God, so precious, and then all of a sudden, after 3-ish, I feel a lot of parents just forget to document. So this was kind of my way to remind people to come in to keep documenting. And so when I started offering mini sessions twice a year, a lot of my clients do come in twice a year for it. And I feel after age 3, some of them, they're not necessarily looking for a full photo session anymore. So these mini sessions were a really great way to just get updated family portraits. And I have fun designing different sets. It gives me that creative part that I like to do. And they get to come into a different set every year. And so it's kind of a win-win situation. the other thing that I don't post so much on my Instagram is all my commercial work. So this stuff I love because if you can get like just a handful of regular commercial clients and shoot for them quarterly or every collection, that's like reoccurring revenue. So I'm also going to talk about this too, because when you start, and I think this is something that a lot of people might not realize that you can get into, because then especially if you're already shooting weddings, you are kind of doing a little bit of this already. So it's like, how do you then pivot, from the like seeing people to creating stories of things, right? Of products, stories of products for people. So like, there's a flower company that I shoot for a lot, and we shoot 4 to 5 times a year. Big like full day production stuff where I shoot like the whole new season's collection for them. And it's fun. It's just, it's not very different than, instead of a face, it's a bouquet of flowers that I get to shoot. There's also like different products, like smaller companies like that's like for the plate ware. That was for a baker in the bottom corner, right? This is for like essential oils. So, but you can have fun with it, and we're going to go over like stuff like that too. And in the hands-on portion, you're going to get the option to play with either creating portraits of people or products as well. But I think this is kind of like one of the easier money making. Well, I mean, children, obviously, because everyone wants to document their children and or pets. But I also feel like the product stuff is a really essential one that businesses need. And if you can market it to businesses, it's great because there's no emotions involved. There's no personalities to try to photograph. And so I think it's like a really straightforward way of making money with photography.